Hello and welcome to Your Voice Dorset Podcast. I'm your host today, I'm Jex, and I'm really pleased to be joined by Will Behenna from the Beach Access Project. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell us what the Beach Access Project is to start off with?
The Beach Access Project is an initiative to raise awareness of the inaccessibility of a lot of beaches across the UK and to come up with solutions to basically make beaches in and across the UK more accessible for people with a range of different medical, mental health conditions and disabilities.
Yeah. And so you're a wheelchair user yourself.
Yep.
And you've obviously seen this as a problem originally in Dorset, or?
It's strange. I've been injured for 37 years and grew up on the beach. Spent most of my youth playing around the beaches of Cornwall, and it never really kind of dawned on me about how inaccessible the beaches are. And when I started the inclusive paddleboarding project a couple of years ago, it became really evident for me locally that I couldn't get to the sea on my paddleboard because there was nowhere along the Bournemouth, Poole, Christchurch beaches that I could actually get to the water because there was just a lot of sand in the way. So that then got me kind of realising, well, actually, this is the same across the whole of the UK. Maybe I should do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the term sort of access and accessibility, obviously from your point of view, you're talking about heading into the water and the issues there are as a wheelchair user going across the sand. But I think a lot of people sort of have different ideas of what accessibility means because it's more than just that, isn't it? Can you talk a little bit about what accessibility really means?
Yeah. So for me, if I use the example of the paddleboarding kind of setup that I'm developing, is that when I'm trying to kind of organise those sorts of activities, people turn up with a whole range of different medical conditions and disabilities, and they need to have accessible parking, they need to have access to kind of toilet changing facilities, and then we need to find somewhere where they can easily access the water, and then that route needs to be barrier free so that anyone who's a wheelchair user, or if they've got crutches, or if they're a bit unsteady on their feet, or they just need some extra guidance, that we need to make that environment as easy to access. And it doesn't benefit just me as a wheelchair user, it benefits everyone.
Yeah. So how sort of have you been going about getting this project to, actually materialise and seeing the changes on beaches in Dorset?
So it actually, the penny dropped when I was out in Spain last year, and I just was over in Alicante, and I just saw how wonderful their beach setup was, and it made me remember what was, the Canary Islands. They've got some fabulous accessible beaches, and so I started doing some research and realising that there are lots of Mediterranean European countries that have got great beach access. So I then started thinking about, well, we could apply those same features to the beaches in Dorset because we have a low tidal range, which makes us very kind of Mediterranean, which is very unique in the UK. So I kind of thought, well, we need to make this happen. Yeah,
absolutely. Have you had, since you've been doing it since last year, is that right?
Yeah, so it started, the penny dropped for me in October, and then in January I set up the Beach Access Project. So I built a website. But the main thing I realised is that there's no data. We don't have any information on people with disabilities and medical conditions, on their thoughts and opinions about the beach. So I wrote a survey and I launched that on the 3rd of June. And that's really the starting point to build up a body of evidence to be able to then use that to justify why, what people with disabilities think about accessing the beach, what it currently looks like, so that we can then start building the right beaches for people and putting in place the right access.
Yeah, and so this isn't just a Dorset-based thing either. You've noticed, obviously, in comparison to other countries, that the UK really has a problem with beach access.
It seems to be, yeah. When you look at what they're doing in France, what they're doing in Portugal, what they're doing in Spain and Greece and Australia and America, they've done lots and lots of work around making their beaches accessible. And for whatever reason, anyone that I've spoken to over the last 6 months about this have said when they've approached local authorities or they've approached landowners to say, you know, can you make this beach more accessible? It's generally just been not listened to, or people come up with a range of excuses, or it's to do with the weather or to do with the wrong type of sand or whatever crazy kind of reasons excuses we come up with. But it just seems that no one has done it yet, which has given me even more drive to want to do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you said earlier you haven't been a wheelchair user your whole life. So you've sort of had the experience both ways of trying to access a beach, I suppose.
Yeah.
How does that feel in that case? Because it must just be incredibly frustrating from, you know, being in a place where you can access the beach easily.
Yeah.
How does it feel now to sort of be, I suppose, sidelined essentially and not be able to do the things that you want to do?
It's because I've never really seen the beach as a place that I would want to go to, because I can park my car and I might be able to get down to the edge of the sand, but then that's it. So I've never really thought of the beach as a place that I really want to spend much time on. So it's kind of just a bit, I love the water. I grew up on the water. Being on the water is where I feel most at ease, and it's a space that when things aren't going well, or when I need to have a bit of a reset or a reflection, I need to be on the water. So but the beach has never really been a place where I could access the water. So it's always been kind of trying to find a jetty or to find a slipway to be able to access it. So yeah, it's difficult to explain how. Yeah, it's really frustrating.
Yeah, I was going to say frustrating must be the word.
That's one of the words I would use. There are a few others, but probably not repeatable.
Yeah, no, completely fair. And, you know, you're obviously representing quite a large community here, and there must be people that are feeling the exact same way that you are. Have you had quite a lot of support since you've started from a lot of people? Yeah,
and I think that's what's really driven me and made me realise how powerful this project can be. So I've used a lot of social media to get the survey out to people in different groups, and it's been in some respects kind of heartwarming to hear people's, you know, that they're really passionate about wanting to be on the beach, but hearing some of the stories around, you know, people who just haven't been to the beach for 10, 15, 20 years because they don't feel part of it. They don't feel that anyone is welcoming them. And so in one respect, that makes me feel kind of frustrated, but then it also then is driving me to want to make a difference for not just me, but for a huge number of people. Some of the research I've done talks about 25% of the population having a disability, 50% of both men and women having a long-term health condition that affects their ability to be physically active. So we're not just talking about a few wheelchair users, we're talking about huge numbers of the population who, if I can make it accessible to me, then it will invariably become accessible to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said, you know of people that have contacted local authorities and have said, you know, raised the issues, I suppose. Have you had much support from local authorities, would you say?
So I haven't spent too much time going down that route because I feel I need to get the evidence first, but I have had meetings recently with BCP Council and with the National Trust in Purbeck, and they have both been really positive about what I'm trying to do, and I have kind of started thinking about how to move that project forward with them, and they are keen. So I think that people are beginning to realise that, yes, our beaches aren't accessible, and yes, we need to do something about it. I've had some funding recently from Dorset National Landscapes, who have asked me to produce, it's a Blue Space Access Toolkit, which is to bring together best case examples in the UK or across the country or abroad to start showcasing what's possible and what has been done already. Because if we can make beaches accessible, that can also be applied to rivers and to lakes and canals and harbours, because a lot of it is very similar situations. So that was a really great kind of recognition of the importance of the project, and beach access will be built into that programme.
Yeah, that's great. Is this something that you've sort of been able to do research on like full time and really commit yourself to now?
Yeah, it's something, I mean, I'm not making... no one is paying me to do this. I'm just doing this off my own sort of drive and determination to want to, hopefully at some point I can turn it into, whether it's a business or an organisation, then that will be great. But for me, I'm at the time in my life where I want to kind of make a difference, and this is a project that I think can have a real impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And this project sort of comes hand in hand with your love of paddleboarding, isn't that right? You've obviously got your inclusive paddleboard T-shirt on now. So did you want to just sort of move over to the sort of paddleboarding side of the project and how that's sort of been a catalyst for the Beach Access project?
Yeah, so like I said, being on the water is where I feel at one with myself. And so I've been involved in sailing, I've been involved in water skiing and scuba diving and kayaking and generally just mucking about on the water. But kayaking has always been the activity I've always enjoyed the most, but it was always quite frustrating for me because I could never roll a kayak or move a kayak on dry land. So I was always reliant on going out with other people. And then when the paddleboards came out, I just looked at it and kind of thought, I can do something with that. So I went into my shed, built a wooden prototype seat, kind of got it on the paddleboard, and that was back in 2021. And then since then, I've just continually modified it to the point where in 2023, I got out on the water independently, meaning that I just rocked up. It was actually in Eyebridge in Wimborne, and turned up at the car park, got my kit out of the car, and I found a set of wheels that I could put my paddleboard onto, steered that down to the water and put all my kit on it, jumped on and went for a paddle. And it was just that feeling of absolute independence.
Yeah.
And along that journey, I started noticing lots of other people who were out paddleboarding, who were kneeling or sitting on their boards, and thought, well, maybe I can do something to help them. And then I've always worked with loads of people with different types of disabilities, and thought paddleboarding can get people safely, cost effectively, and in a really great community out into blue space. So that's where the two projects kind of connect together around making blue space accessible and using paddleboards to enable people to enjoy that and interact with kind of being out in the water.
Yeah, and that's an amazing thing you've done there, and it's something to be so proud of, that, you know, that first moment when you were able to independently go out. But at the same time, it is obviously, you know, sad that you had to do that all yourself, and a lot of people in similar positions to you might not even, you know, have access to the materials or the ideas behind that. So just talk me through like how exactly you managed to manufacture. I'm sure we'll actually get some pictures of the paddleboards that you make, but what is the process of you being able to make an inclusive paddleboard?
So the paddleboards are all standard paddleboards. I don't do anything to the paddleboards, and I was very conscious that I didn't want to have an adaptive paddleboard. I wanted to make kit that could go on to a paddleboard that then would enable people to try and use different paddleboards. So I've made equipment I've made a seat that attaches onto the handle of a paddleboard, and then I've made a kneeling support which will enable someone who has the ability to kneel on a paddleboard to be able to get out on the water. So we have an interesting scenario where it's called stand-up paddleboarding, and in reality, paddleboard, you can lie on it, you can sit on it, you can kneel on it, you can have a party on it if you've got a few of them all kind of like connected together. So it's just a very wide, flat, stable piece of kit. So when I talk about it, I always talk about paddleboarding as opposed to SUP, because for most activities like, you know, kayaking or canoeing or sailing, we don't specify what position your body is in on it, or cycling or rowing. You know, people use all sorts of different ways to do things, but it's just historical that we call it stand-up paddleboarding, which actually I've had people come to me saying, oh, I've been told I can't stand up, therefore I can't join this paddleboarding club. We've moved a long way.
Yeah, it's completely the wrong idea, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. But I mean, I've worked with clients with autism or ADHD, and all they want to do is lie on it and paddle around, and it's kind of like, well, that's just fine. You're out on the water, you're experiencing blue space. That's what we want. If you just use this, see it as a wide, flat, stable base that you can get out and play on, and then you can, you know, I've got colleagues of mine that put beanbags on paddleboards so that people can actually sit in, you know, in real comfort because they have difficulty standing. So it's a fabulous piece of kit to use, and I can see it. You know, there aren't too many people that I can't get out on the water now.
That's incredible, isn't it? And so yeah, you said you have like colleagues or you had clients. Is this like a group of people that comes together to paddleboard together, or do you just work with individuals?
So at the moment, I'm working with a small number of individuals. So at the beginning of April, I went through my paddleboard instructor's qualifications because I felt that I needed to be able to do it kind of professionally and safely with, you know, all the appropriate qualifications and risk assessment. And then I work with physiotherapists and groups like that locally. And the way that I'm trying to develop it is that we link into people's recovery from kind of injury or their own kind of low personal medical condition. And that seems to be having a really powerful effect. But at the moment, it's just me. So I've only got a limited amount of time to be able to take people out, but I've got plans to change that this year for next year. So to have, I want to get together a group of volunteers and then train them up as paddleboarding instructors, and then they can kind of go out and do some of the magic that I do.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, obviously, yeah, you're only one person at the moment, but can you see this, you know, we're obviously here in Dorset, but there's so many beaches around the country. Can you see this becoming, you know, growing outside of Dorset as well?
Yeah, so this year I've developed Inclusive Paddleboarding Workshop, which is through Paddle UK. And so I delivered my first one down in Devon in May, and then delivered the second one up in Gloucester a couple of weeks ago. I was due to deliver one over in Kent over the weekend, but the weather was against us. So I'm looking at ways to enable more people to be able to take on the role of inclusive adaptive paddleboarding coaches and instructors. So absolutely, it can be replicated anywhere where there's water.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you said as well that you know, it's not just for wheelchair users. There's a lot of different people that are able to do it. How do you adapt sort of each? I know you had like a beanbag and stuff, but how do you adapt sort of paddleboards to each individual person and each individual disability?
So again, it just depends on how someone wants to kind of position themselves on a paddleboard. So a lot of the time we start off with people sitting on the paddleboard. So if you imagine a seat which has got a solid back and then solid sides, so it gives people both postural and lateral support. And then we kind of provide support underneath the knees so that then that helps their sitting position, and then basically give them a paddle, and then we get out on the water. I've developed a system that can support people who have only got one arm or who have maybe got weaker upper body strength. So it actually holds the paddle in front of you, and then it pivots and twists so that you can paddle with limited function. And then for someone with, say, if I'm working with a single leg amputee, then they might be able to kneel on the paddleboard. So we would then position them on the kneeling stack, and that then can give them a stronger paddling position. So it really depends on an individual basis. Some people can progress up to standing as well. You know, we're always looking at, there's a starting point for people on their paddling journey, and then we want to then support them to get to the most positive paddling position that they can be in, and support them to be as independent as they want to be.
And how much does that mean to people?
Well, I know how much it means to me, which is, you know, that the idea of making something and then working with someone and then seeing the smile on their face, that's kind of what I do it for, really. And when they sort of say, right, I want to come back, and I'm bringing my grandparents as well, who are coming down from Lincolnshire, you're kind of thinking, okay, this is a serious business now. People really, you know, so it's enormously powerful, and people are really wanting to, just invest their time in it. I haven't had anyone that's done it and then not wanted to come back and do it again.
That's
so
great.
that tells me all I need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking maybe more like long term now, this is still fairly new, you know, in the grand scheme of things, and it seems to have come so far already. What are, you know, sort of the next steps, and what's the ultimate goal, really?
So next steps with the Beach Access project is the survey runs until the 30th of September. And I've got a colleague over at the University of Brighton that is looking to support me to do the data analysis so that we can get all of the headlines out of that. Then next week, I'm going to launch the Beach Access Audit, which is going to be a phone-based bit of software so that you can so individuals can go and audit their own beaches, and it will be a lot of photographs for people to take of accessible parking, accessible toilet facilities, and then if there are other, you know, if there are beach wheelchairs or matting or boardwalks onto the beaches, to take photos of that. What it will give us then is a stock of, or give us a real visual representation of what access to beaches is like in the UK. So that will be an ongoing then project to build that up. And then I am planning in September, October time to bring together people in Dorset specifically to talk about how we can look to make Dorset the most inclusive and accessible blue space in the UK. Which, it's, you know, you've got to start somewhere. So absolutely, why not start on your home turf? And then looking for funding to then kind of highlight some projects that we know that we can start and make happen, so that we can start to kind of create a real identity for the project. A project that I'm really passionate about at the moment is Hingersbury Head Outdoors, which is a new community outdoor centre that's just putting spades in the ground to start doing some amazing work over there. So I'm really keen to support that project. And then I'm also connecting nationally with different organisations to talk about the Beach Access project and how that could be rolled out in other areas of the country. But Dorset's going to be my primary focus. Yeah,
absolutely, for sure. And do you see, you know, like inclusive paddleboarding, do you see that ever extending to other water sports or sports in general? Do you think there's a lot of room for improvement in Dorset particularly?
Possibly. I think the paddleboard is a great tool to get people engaged with the water, and we can then support them to get involved in adaptive rowing, sailing, swimming. There's cold water swimming, immersion, kind of like therapy locally. There's some surfing down at Boscombe with wild and free therapy. There's the coastal barbarians over in Studland that want to develop mixed ability rowing. And there's sailability in pool. So we've got the opportunity to connect all of these things together and provide a real sort of opportunity for, for both local people and for tourists when they come down to come and experience a fabulous space. And we've also got the wonderful rivers and lakes, that, the Stour and the Avon, which are just, gorgeous places to go and paddle. So we've got everything here. We just need to bring it all together. So that's going to be my drive. But the paddleboarding will also, I want the paddleboarding to go national, and international as well. I was talking to a colleague of mine a couple of days ago, about being able to take some of the inclusive paddleboarding to some other countries. And I've made connections in Slovakia, in the Czech Republic, and people want to make their outdoor spaces more accessible. So, but we can drive it here. Yeah,
absolutely. I suppose as well, if you've travelled a bit as well, you've seen the accessibility to the beaches in other countries. If they've also already got that, those facilities there, the inclusive paddleboarding is definitely something that they would be interested in as well. So internationally, it's amazing.
Well, I was out in Norway a couple of weeks ago on a adaptive kayaking paddling trip, and you just, to be able to give people the skills and confidence to then enable them to go and paddle in Italy or in France or in Sweden or Norway. It's just it just opens up a whole new world for people, so trying to lead from the front, and then hoping that kind of people then see what I'm doing and then say, can I come and play as well? I'm like, yep, come on in, come and join us all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's amazing as well, because obviously you've not let your disability affect you at all, and so I suppose you're a little bit of a role model for those people as well. What would you say to someone with a disability that's considering trying out a water sport or inclusive paddleboarding specifically?
I think it's that people are always going to be nervous about doing something new, and certainly when you get out on the water, people have a whole range of different concerns. Am I going to get cold? Am I going to get wet? What am I going to do if I fall in? All of the the standard stuff that anyone might feel. But if you've got a disability or a medical condition, those concerns might be heightened, and a lot of the time we can alleviate those just by talking through them and looking. There are so many different solutions that we can kind of come up with, whether we need to kind of look at equipment or look at the kit that you wear or the people that we've got in the water with you, it's all doable, and that's kind of one of the things I love about kind of being out on the water with great instructors, is that we can do some amazing stuff, and we can allay all of those fears. So if people are interested, then just get in contact and we can start a conversation. And that's for me, that's the most important thing. It's not about throwing someone out on a paddleboard onto the water and saying, right, see how you go. That's not how we want to do things. It's around talking to people and listening and building up a relationship with them, and going on that journey together with them.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the last question that we ask all of our guests, this is going to be interesting from your perspective, because obviously you see Dorset as a place that has room for improvement as well. But yeah, what we always ask people is, what does Dorset mean to you?
Oh my gosh, that's a big
I know,
question.
it stumped quite a few people.
Yeah, I should have been pre-warned about that, shouldn't
Sorry,
I?
I'm putting you on the spot. I'm putting you on the spot.
What does it mean to me? Well, I think a lot of it is to do with community and connection. So many people that I've been talking to and connecting with over the last 18 months have just welcomed the thoughts and ideas that I've got with open arms. And that's been so powerful. No one has kind of said, oh, no, you can't do that. Everyone has kind of said, well, how do you do that? That's interesting. So that I think makes having that open door and people being thoughtful about it, that to me is a really powerful kind of energy that comes from the people in Dorset. The coastline is phenomenal. I mean, Dorset can't be credited for having a low tidal range by it's not we have it here, and that's just a really massive asset that Dorset has. And it's the coastline, some of the places that you can go are world class. So the environment itself is just brilliant. So I think the people and the nature and the coastline is what makes Dorset so special.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really, really do appreciate it. If you want to just tell our listeners how they can get in contact with you or see more about the Beach Access Project and the survey.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram at Inclusive Paddleboarding, and then on Facebook, you can, if you just type in Inclusive Paddleboarding or the Beach Access Project, it will come up. And I have inclusivepaddleboarding.co.uk and the beachaccessproject.co.uk. And all of my contact details are there.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Will.
Pleasure.